Konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, bringing you episode 184 here at the Tavern, presented by HeroTaku.com. So, for those of you who watched my episode about the new Rita for the upcoming Power Rangers movie, you'll know that when I talked about the casting of Elizabeth Banks in the role of Rita, I did not feel that that was a case of whitewashing in Hollywood in terms of the Rita character. Because it is my belief that Rita herself, and of course the source she comes from, Witch Bandora, is Japanese, not on purpose, but well, that's just kind of how it is. It's incidentally that she is Japanese. Because, of course, when filming, I'm going to reiterate this point, when filming Super Sentai, that's what you have to draw from. You have a Japanese actress, and if you're Saban, you're going to go ahead and use the footage, you're using the same footage of a Japanese actress. But the character of Rita is not dependent on her being Japanese. Now, of course, when they gave her an actress in Power Rangers to interact with our American cast, they did go ahead and try to get somebody who looked like an Asian woman, or because I believe Miss Perez is not Asian, someone to look enough like her to be in the role, because you've already established that this Rita is Asian. So if you're going to go ahead and recast, you have to have an Asian-looking woman in the role. So again, the movie Rita and the TV Rita are two completely different instances here. One, you have to go based on what's been established, but in the other, since you are establishing something new and there's nothing to Rita's character that says she needs to be Japanese in origin, especially since she's from outer space, how could she be Japanese? Then you're free to cast anybody in that particular role. However, there are instances within the Power Rangers series where there is clear whitewashing for things that I just don't particularly understand. And let me kind of explain to you guys my thought process and exactly what I mean here. So there are a lot of times in which Power Rangers will use the Sentai footage, and sometimes they'll make up new characters in it. So, a good example, Power Rangers in space. We do know that from the Power Rangers, from Mega Ranger, the villains were basically unusable and different from what we want to go ahead and use. So we created the characters of Astronema, used the Ecliptor suit, brought Elgar back in for some unknown reason, invented the Quantrons and whatnot. So we invented a completely new character because we couldn't use the Sentai footage for whatever reason. We get that later in Lost Galaxy. We didn't use the Sentai footage of their villains to the way they did, so we created Scorpius, we created Trakina, we introduced the Stingwingers. We came up with something new that was in there, and that's completely fine. Making brand new characters for the series, I have no problem in that. Basically, I'm told nothing that was used in Car Ranger was at all suitable for translation into Turbo, thus they created Divatox. But there are a number of unusual instances where we do use the Japanese counterpart villain, but we recast the role in a white role. So, again, specifically what I mean here. Take a look at the character of Scorpina, obviously played by a Japanese actress over in Zoo Ranger. When we brought her over, they casted Sabrina Liu in the role of Scorpina because you got two Asian actresses, and of course, when you bring them over, you have to establish she's Asian because she's not going to pull a Khan Noonien Singh and automatically turn white between movies. That just doesn't happen. So, of course, it makes sense you have to cast an Asian woman in the role of Scorpina. But there are and of course later seasons, in Wild Force, Sin Wong, she ended up playing the role of Toxica, who is Japanese, and of course in America she's Japanese. The same thing happened to the character Vipra when they brought her over to Lightspeed Rescue. Got a Japanese actress to go ahead and play her for the American footage, and that makes all the sense in the world, I think. But then there are times that we try to do a one-for-one translation of the characters where they are Japanese in the Sentai, but you recast them in white person roles. So let me give a good example of this. Let's go ahead and take a look at Mara and Capri from Ninja Storm. Now, for those of you who had seen Hurricane, they do have Japanese counterparts. They are girls, they're in these bug weird costumes, wherever the heck they're supposed to go ahead and be, and they are significantly utilized within Hurricane as one of the main antagonists of the series, and there's even footage of them fighting the Rangers one-on-one. Now, when they did bring him over to Ninja Storm, they casted 2 white women in the role, despite the fact that they automatically cut themselves down on the number of the amount of usable footage that they can go ahead and use. I do believe in Ninja Storm there's a battle that they have between the two where it's heavily edited because you can't see their faces because the footage is of Japanese people, and of course you hired white people in the roles of these characters. I find that quite odd that they would do that. Another example is Nadira from Time Force, and this is under Saban's rule here that the Nadira's Time Ranger counterpart was Japanese, and you bring over and cast a white woman with pink hair in this role. But you can only use the footage of Nadira from the backside, from her behind, because you can't show her face. You've ridden yourself into a corner basically to where, well, we're not going to use the Japanese actress. We're going to use the white actress now, so we can't even use that footage. And I find that odd that you would even do that in the first place, that you would, say we're going to make things more difficult for us by taking away usable footage. But of course, I do completely agree that, hey, if you're going to go ahead and do a series, you should make it your own. You shouldn't be heavily reliant on the footage. But even, for these companies who want to use more of the footage, they automatically take that away from them. And then there are bizarre instances where, take a look at the villains from Jungle Fury. Okay, so in Geki Ranger had Ryo and Melee in this palace, and it's got these Chinese type of designs to it and stuff. And you use the exact same set over in Jungle Fury, but you recast the roles of Ryo and Melee to Daishi and Camille, and you replace them by white actors. I believe the term for this is face actors as opposed to suit actors. And trust me, we lost a lot when we didn't get Melee into the series, and Camille's just a watered down version. But the question is, why do they go ahead and do this? Is this some sort of form of whitewashing where they take a role that is played by a Japanese actress, but put a white actress in that exact same costume? Because again, I'm not talking about making new characters like Trakina, Astrama, and Divatox. I'm talking about characters who already exist in Sentai. We're using their costumes to obviously use the usable footage that's in there, but we're going to be using white women instead of the role. And actually, it's always white women because I can't think of a single instance where they put a black woman into the role or another woman of a minority in there, which I do find kind of odd. I just now thought of that, folks, and that is odd, isn't it? Anyway, are these cases of whitewashing in terms of the Power Rangers series? I kind of think there is, because there really is no reason why you can't hire an Asian woman in the role to add said diversity to the cast, and of course make it a lot easier for the footage that you're using. Because there are a lot of scenes from Geki Ranger where Melee is fighting the Geki Rangers when they are morphed and she is not in her armored form. That you certainly could have used. Of course, Jungle Fairy did go a completely different direction than what Geki Ranger was doing in terms of story, so I get that. But isn't it taking away jobs from these Asian actresses to the roles of these white women? I mean, again, look at the character of Camille. Her actress had played other characters before in Power Rangers, so why bring her back? Obviously, she's a proven talent for you, I get that, when you could give another opportunity to another actress. And I think that's really what the whitewashing thing comes down to for a lot of people, is that it's not so much about cultural appropriation, which it is, but you're not given the opportunity for Asian actresses to get in there and make names for themselves to become popular. Because when you cast Sabrina Liu in the role of Scorpina, you gave Sabrina Liu the opportunity here. When you cast Sin Wong in the role of Toxica, you gave her an opportunity there. But you're given second and third opportunities to actresses that you're reusing, but you're also given opportunities to white actresses, which are honestly a dime a dozen. And again, I just find that odd. I'm not really here to say if it's right or wrong. I'm not going to take a stance on either of those in this particular instance. But again, I just find it odd that you have that costume. It goes on, a Japanese person in the footage, but then you put on a white person for no discernible reason. And yes, I know in a lot of these shows they are reshooting the footage, but again, look at what they did for Lightspeed Rescue, because they shot original footage with the American Vipera in there, and mixed and spliced it in with the Japanese footage. And obviously they did that so they can get more use out of the footage of the Vipera's Japanese counterpart. And even in, what's odd about the Ninja Storm example is, again, I believe Hurricane, which I have not seen, but I've read the synopsis. There were 7 main villains, and the Mara and Capri counterparts were one of the major villains within that series. So again, it's like, I feel that one of the major villains are going to be involved in a lot of the stuff that's going on, but you choose not to go ahead and use them. Also, Mystic Force, because I'm still a little confused on what was happening in Magi Ranger, because the character of Lily is introduced because they can't use the two blue-haired and bright lipstick twins for some reason. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but Mystic Force would have been 100 times better if we had Japanese twin girls and they were blue hair. That would have been awesome. How come we didn't get that? How come we got Lily as a character of all people? I mean, seriously? Okay, but that's probably my bias talking right here. I guess I don't have too much else to go ahead and say in the matter. The reason I really wanted to talk about this video is I wanted to kind of bring up how unusual it is for that to be happening. Because once I started looking at it, I was like, yeah, that is kind of odd. Because again, if you're going to create a brand new villain like Astronema, go ahead. That's fine. I have no issue with it. I think that's good that you're making new villains for the show. But when you're taking established costumed characters that have faces, and those faces happen to be Asian, but then you cast a white person in that role, it's just, I just don't understand the reasoning behind it. Why do that in the first place? I mean, obviously it would be to use the footage that you have. They're in costume, we're going to use their footage. That would be the reason you would do it, to keep the costume. But then you shoot yourself in the foot because, okay, so now we can't use some of that footage because we hired a white woman, so now we can't show their face and we have to shoot new footage for that role. So either you create a brand new character and shoot all new footage for it, or you bring over one of the Japanese characters, make them Asian in their American counterpart so you can use more footage in there. Again, it's just kind of odd that they would go ahead and do that. The only thing I can think of, and this is just off the top of my head right now as I'm rambling on to you guys, the only thing I can think of why they wouldn't want to do that is they wouldn't want to portray Japanese people as the villain every single time whenever we have a human character interacting. That's the only thing I can think of, is that they wouldn't want to do that. But no one has ever, I can't think of anybody who's ever said that the roles of Rita and Scorpion in the first season of Power Rangers were detrimental to Asian culture. If anything, we got a minority female in significant starring roles within a popular television show. Whether they're the villain or not, I think is irrelevant in that situation. But that's the only thing I could think of, is that people would find objectionable, is that you're making Japanese women the bad guys, and that's not good for X and X reason. That's the only thing I can think of, but that's something I've never heard in the context of Power Rangers at all. Okay, so what I would like to know is, what do you guys think in this particular instance? Do you think recasting these Japanese roles is an example of whitewashing in Power Rangers, and how do you feel about it? And what do you think should be done? I mean, it seems obvious that what we're getting for Ninja Steel is going to be a bunch of costume villains, and we may get one or two original characters, but of course, based on the Ninja footage, they didn't have any face actors, if you will, so that's not going to affect the upcoming season, but who knows what we're going to get down the line. Alright, so that's all I really got on this topic. I want to know what you guys think. Leave your comments below and let me know. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.